We're joined now by Derrick Fox, president of the Valero Alamo Bowl. Derrick, as the bowl gets closer and closer, the plot continues to thicken. Basically, every team from Big 12 and Pac-12 are in play right now. Let's start with the Big 12. Baylor undefeated no more. They lost to Oklahoma after leading 28-3 in the first half. Did you see any highlights or see the game? What are your thoughts on it?
Got to see some of the highlights. I was actually out at the UCLA-Utah game myself, so kind of watching the screen up there and watching the phone for the scores to come in. But, you know, obviously, tough loss from Baylor's perspective, obviously be up like that at home, but give Oklahoma credit, especially without CeeDee Lamb to come back and win that game. So likely rematch in the Big 12 championship, so we'll see what happens. But two exciting teams. Two teams are talking about possibly being in the CFP, but also within one game away from being our game, too.
Yeah, another loss or two, and you never know what's going to happen. The moral of that story is never lead 28-3, right? Falcons know something about that.
Absolutely.
In
never
the
too big a
NFL.
lead, especially a team that's as high offensive production as Oklahoma is.
And sticking with the Big 12, most recent college football playoff rankings released last night. 4 teams from the Big 12 in. One of them is Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy and the mullet. First off, can you pull off a mullet? Do you think you can pull that off?
Let me work on that. I think back in high school.
What do you think of the Cowboys so far this year, though?
They've had a good year.
Fit?
Unfortunately for them, losing their star receiver in Wallace was tough from that perspective, but obviously Chuba Hubbard has been unbelievable as far as this year, and a Heisman Trophy candidate. Obviously an exciting team offensively every year, and they've done a great job at Oklahoma State, and a really great fan base. They've been here several times, very excited about coming to San Antonio, so got a couple more games to go, one big one at the end of the year with Bedlam, so we'll see how they do.
And then Iowa State is back in the top 25 after beating Texas over the weekend. Cyclones were in the Valero Alamo Bowl last season. What are your thoughts on a potential repeat? I don't know, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's always interesting. We, never say never. You typically don't do that, but you take a look at it. We've done it with Purdue. We've done it with Texas from that perspective in back-to-back years. So it does happen with the right situation. Iowa State fans obviously traveled well last year, which is a big thing from that perspective. And they've got some key games going down the stretch. So if they're to win out, finish 8-4, and especially if you have two teams up in the CFP, say Baylor and Oklahoma are gone, you may have a lot of teams in that 8-4 range that look very similar. So now you start taking a look and seeing what dynamic, how they won their way into or lost their way into your game, history, matchup, style of play, lots goes into it.
And time will tell. And like we said a couple of weeks ago when we talked, there's still a lot of football left to be played. I mean, the bowl game obviously getting closer and closer. Still a lot of football to be played, a lot left to figure out. We'll be back to talk about the Pac-12 later in the show. Back with Derrick Fox, president of the Valero Alamo Bowl. Time to talk some Pac-12. You mentioned it earlier in the show. You were actually at the Utah-UCLA game over the weekend. What did you see when you were there?
Great game from that perspective. As far as Utah is concerned, they actually were down 3-0 and scored 49 straight. So they're certainly dominating this year. Typically they're very good defensively, very good in special teams, but this year offensively they're stellar as well. So I think that level of play is right there and ranked 7th in this week's CFP poll. So had a great year. Basically a solid fan base that sells out every week. I think it was the 7th largest crowd last week in the UCLA game. So great to see that program, and who knows, they could be in our mix.
Yeah, it could be. And then always it's exciting to see a college game when you're actually there in person. What benefit does it provide to you and your team when you get to go to these games in person? Again, what kind of benefit does that provide?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, you can watch the game on TV and obviously see style of play, get the trends, see what's going on, see key players, but really get the sense of excitement from the fan bases. So you're walking through the tailgate parties, getting a chance to talk to those people, and hey, you come down to San Antonio if you're in the Valero Alamo Bowl. We know the goal right now is the Rose Bowl or wherever you want to win your conference. We get it. But I think just having a sense of it, a lot of people there were specifically remembered back when Utah was here in the Final Four a number of years ago, had a great experience in San Antonio. So I think they're ready to come should that opportunity present itself.
Any other games that are lined up that you or anyone else from your team are going to this weekend?
This weekend, as far as Pac-12 is concerned, we'll be at UCLA, USC. And then the other side will be in 3 games in the Big 12 with the Oklahoma game, the Texas at Baylor, and then we'll be at the Iowa State game as well.
Sticking with talk of Utah and Oregon specifically, they're obviously both ranked very high in the college football playoffs, and they both still have playoff on their mind. However, they're going to meet, obviously, in the Pac-12 championship game. One of those teams is going to lose. After that loss, what do you think is the likelihood that that losing team becomes the discussion for the Valero Alamo Bowl?
Yeah, I think obviously the good and bad of that situation is you're going to have 2 highly ranked teams. If they win out and go in that game 11-1, likely the winner will then advance to the top 4 teams or higher, depending on what happens, be in the semifinals. The loser in that case would actually go to the Rose Bowl and backfill the Rose Bowl because of the conference affiliation. Then we would turn our attention to the others in the lineup, which right now would be USC and Washington. But obviously Oregon and Utah at the top of the heap right now and having great years. So what's interesting is we're talking about them possibly being in the semifinal game, but on one loss, now they're in the Valero Alamo Bowl mix as well.
There you go. Time will tell. Thanks again for your time, Derrick. Thanks for talking to us once again. New Year's Eve, it's getting closer and closer, folks. Bowl season right around the corner.
For tickets to this year's Valero Alamo Bowl, visit alamobowl.com/tickets. The game is set for New Year's Eve at 6:30.